Joining me now, running for Lieutenant Governor, Glenn Davis. And the Lieutenant Governor's race on the Republican side, there's all kinds of candidates running. 6, actually. We'll just tell you the Republicans right now for the purposes of time. Senator Jill Vogel, Senator Bryce Reeves, and House of Delegates member Glenn Davis closing in this race. In fact, he just had a new poll come out showing that he was the front runner. Stranger things have happened. And he's staying out of the email controversy and talking about my favorite topic, jobs, and more jobs. Joining us now, Glenn Davis. Hey, Glenn, how are you?
I'm doing well, John. I'm not doing as well, obviously, as you up there in the nation's capital. And I can't believe anyone's doubting your conservative credentials. But if you need, we can help run a poll on that, too, if you need us to assist.
I just don't do the conspiracy theory, InfoWars, Alex Jones stuff. I said on CNN the other night they were bringing that up, and I'm like, I can't go there because 50% of the stuff they say, they just make it up, and who's got the time to, decipher through the 50% that might be true? It's kind of ridiculous, but that's just me. I know I got a lot of Alex Jones fans out there. Whatever, he's on at noon. If you can find him, I'm not interested. All right. Let's talk about your race. We just had Jill Vogel on. There could be a lawsuit. There is no lawsuit. Volunteers are getting subpoenaed by Senator Reeves. What the hell is going on here?
John, you probably know more than I do watching over that. I hear kind of the same either facts or rumors, whether they happen to be given the day. All I know is what people care about. And the poll that was in the field on the 24th and 23rd of February said 35% of all the likely Republican voters care about jobs and the economy as their number one issue. And we took a good chunk of them, and it's why when the polls came back, 42% of those likely Republican voters, when asked if the election was held that day, that they would support Glenn Davis for lieutenant governor. So you can imagine we're thrilled. We're not resting on our laurels, but we know our message is resonating. We had the right message since day one, and we're continuing to build on it.
So, look, you started this campaign, Glenn Davis. You were a distant third, really an afterthought for some people. Everybody thought, look, the 2 senators were going to be the big hitters, Vogel, Reeves. Now, tell us about this new public opinion survey that you got that actually showed you in the lead. Walk us through that.
Sure. So War Room Strategies did a poll on the 23rd and 24th of February. They polled 875 likely Republican primary voters, and it was a rather extensive poll on issues and different races and all, and 40 pages across tabs. But the question that was most interesting was, if the election was held today, who would you vote for? Bryce Reeves, Jill Vogel, Glenn Davis. Obviously, multiple. The orders change on every call, and 42% responded, that they would support us. And when you started drilling down, we started realizing why. 35% said jobs and the economy were the most important issue. And, John, as you know, that was our issue from the beginning. When we first came out on April 1st of last year, we said we've got a 4-point plan to make Virginia number one again for business and job growth, and we stuck with it. We didn't go to guns and then pivot to abortion and pivot to bathrooms and pivot to this. Jobs and the economy is where we are sticking. There's a lot of issues that are important to us as conservatives, but let's put people back to work and allow people to get a better standard of quality of life for them and their family. And then when you drill down and see how much of that base we took, and then also even around the Commonwealth, when you go through the crosstabs on the congressional districts, and we're winning 6 of the 11 congressional districts. And that's, honestly, it's grassroots campaigning, John. You know that RV's been around 40,000 miles around the Commonwealth. And it's, made a difference. People have heard us. They've seen us. They've heard our message, and it's resonating.
All right. So what are some of the top things that you're going to do? Let's get into a little policy, because I know that's what you love to talk about. Glenn, give us some meat here on the bones. Put some meat on the burger. So you've been talking about jobs for 6 months. Obviously, you're resonating, whether some people say that poll is accurate or who sanctioned it. There's no question anybody you talk to in the state says that your campaign is now even. You're right there in the mix. Give me the 3 or 4 specific things as lieutenant governor that you're going to do that is actually going to bring jobs to the state, and be as specific as you can.
Sure. Well, John, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the double taxation on in-state companies, on those high-tech companies. when they sell services out of state. Right now, we're driving IT companies, we're driving cybersecurity companies, we're driving high-tech companies out of Virginia because of that double taxation that exists because of an old, antiquated tax code that we've got. Most other states have shifted and pivoted from that and fixed that problem. Virginia hasn't. North Carolina has, Maryland has, D.C. has, California has, but 17 states like us have not. So if we want a high-tech economy with this high-tech jobs for that next generation, we need to make sure we get our tax code reformed. That's priority number one. The second thing we need to do is we need to bring manufacturing back to Virginia. Now, we're starting to do that. It's been growing, but there's so much innovation out there. John, you remember, when I went to Estonia and talking about those ultracapacitors. Estonia is a wonderful country. They've got an amazing, talent and innovation over there, but a very small workforce. They got to manufacture someplace. Right now, they're looking to manufacture in a state in the United States, but it's not Virginia. We're looking to bring that to Virginia because of some natural resources, i.e. coal, that we have here. That's what's going to take, John. People are sick and tired of rhetoric. They're tired of words. They want to see action, and this whole campaign with us has all been about action. I've never asked anyone to support us based on what I tell them I'm going to do. It's what we've shown them that we are doing.
Well, look, your message discipline has been uncanny. There's no question about it. I'm going to ask the same questions I've asked some of the other candidates. And I want to get to Dominion Power and the rate deal that was negotiated and orchestrated by State Senator Frank Wagner in 2015, where rates are frozen, and in return for that, there's a 7-year period where there's no auditing. And so rates are what they are. Wagner says, look, rates have gone down. You ought to be happy. Other people say that it was predicated upon the Clean Power Act, which is now defunct. That was supposed to cost Dominion Power hundreds of millions of dollars to comply with that. Now they don't have to comply with it because it's gone. It's not coming back. Some people in the General Assembly, and along with Governor McAuliffe, who signed the bill, now saying that it should be revisited because there's no Clean Power Act, and so it's not fair to consumers, and we ought to open the thing back up. What say you?
Well, John, that bill was one of those, risk rewards. Do we want to minimize the risk for the taxpayers and reward them and prevent the increase in rates based on that federal act? I wasn't at the table to help negotiate this, and obviously what came out was a freeze on the rates. However, those audits would stop. Could there have been a better win-win middle ground? Quite possibly. At this point, I think people need to sit around the table and say, what can we do that is in the best interest of the taxpayers, and is there justification for an adjustment? I always think that things, given new facts, given new realities, that things need to be revisited. Now, does that mean something has changed? Maybe, but at minimum, there should be those discussions to see what's going on. But at the end of the day, the deal was worked. It did protect the ratepayers in case Hillary Clinton won. But obviously that's not the case, thank God, and that we have a President Trump that got rid of the act.
Right, but the other side of the coin is you made a bargain, right? The bargain was to stabilize rates no matter what happens. And somebody, when you make one of these deals, you hope it's a win-win-win, but, often somebody loses because things change and costs were higher or something was different. In this case, perhaps Dominion got the better of the deal, but if, like you said, if Hillary had won, it would have been the opposite. And I guess my issue with it is if the opposite happened and Dominion's compliance costs were dramatically higher, would we be coming back and saying, well, we need to have a new rate deal so we can pay higher rates? And if Dominion did that, we'd all go crazy, right? So, it's like you can't have it both ways.
No, you can't.
Okay,
but
so we're on
but
the
it doesn't mean that you don't sit around the table, John, and talk. Maybe there is some scenarios where because this act got killed, so early, and we can talk. There's some discussion with Dominion, and maybe there is help to be an offset. I think you're 100% right. The General Assembly cannot go to Dominion and say we made a deal, now we're going to renege. You can't do that. But what you can do is have the stakeholders around the table and say, here's the new reality. is there some place that still makes good sense for you and the protections that and make good on the protections that you offered, but at the same time help give some of the upside of a President Donald Trump to the taxpayers, and see if there's a middle ground that everyone can reach together. But like you said, it's not a heavy-handed approach. A deal was made, and that can't be reneged on. But everyone is reasonable.
Okay, now let's get to Medicaid expansion in Virginia. So what we know about Obamacare Light that came out yesterday of the House Congressional Republican Leadership Committee, we're calling it Obamacare 2.0. What we know is that it allows for an extension of payments for Medicaid expansion for those states that opted in to take the money. So if I'm Terry McAuliffe right now, I'm saying, wow, man, am I a seer or what? I was right. I told everybody to take the money. You wouldn't take it. Everybody said, oh, Obamacare is going to go down the tubes, and then we're going to be holding the bag. And now, according to the plan that's come out, the states that opted in continue to get all the money, and the states that opted out get a pittance of that. Was Terry McAuliffe right?
No. John, I voted against Medicaid expansion or to prevent it happening by the governor unilaterally 6 times between 2014 and this past General Assembly session. You can't throw good money into a bad system. Medicaid's broken. It used to be 5% of our budget. Now it's over 25 or 20% of our budget. And throwing more money at it doesn't fix it. Who was right was, I still think, Tom Rust and I, with the reform of the Medicaid plan. We don't need to plug holes in a sinking ship. We need a whole new ship. It's what Tom Rust and I put together when we looked at Medicaid reform, very similar to what Governor Pence did at the time in Indiana, and what's been working very well up there. It was modeled after Governor Allen's 1995 welfare reform package. It was meant to get people off Medicaid. You can't just keep increasing the cost of Medicaid and the number of people inside of an entitlement system year after year. It's going to bankrupt the Commonwealth. We've got to reform it. So I would tell you, I still think to this day, even in hindsight, the governor was wrong. I think that we have to do a reform of the Medicaid system before we put more dollars into it.
Okay, so name a couple of the principles of the reform that you want, Glenn.
Well, the first thing, John, that we've got to do, and it was the underlying part of the reform package, was helping people get able-bodied people get off Medicaid. Right now, if you make $1 more than the allowable limit, you lose all your benefits. So people really can't take the $1 an hour wage increase. They can't take the promotion at work because they'll lose all their benefits. What we need to do is have a gradual scale, where if someone makes $100 more than the allowable limit, let's say 25% of that goes to the state to offset their cost of those benefits still while they're walking off Medicaid. And the minute they start walking off Medicaid, they're going to reach a point where they qualify for private insurance through their employer. And Virginia already has plans like the HIP program that compensates or subsidizes employers for getting people off Medicaid once they qualify for private insurance. So that's the most important part of any type of reform, John, is helping people get off the system. Because right now, it's a hostage system. There is no way really for people to get off of that Medicaid system. The second thing is the waste, fraud, and abuse. That was part of our reform package, was getting tighter on the waste, fraud, and abuse piece to make sure that money was being used properly, efficiently, and effectively. And the third piece of the equation that I think is very important is the requirement of looking for work in community service. John, when you're on those programs, you owe it to the community, to the taxpayers, to be looking to try to get off those programs. And not only that, but if you're on them, you should be doing something to give back to the community. Community service is a great way to give back to the community through a number of different means. But not only that, John, you and I both know, having done a lot of volunteer work ourselves, that's a great way to network. And someone out there with a good work ethic, volunteering their time for whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or whether it's to help beautify the Chesapeake Bay or streets, may run into someone who owns a company that is looking for a hard worker and find themselves employed. So those were three of the pieces that were very important to our reform package for Medicaid in Virginia, and I think it should be part of any package going forward.
All right. We're out of time, but I got 5 texts here while you were on the air, Glenn. I'm going to read 2 of them. of the 5, all positive, by the way, so I'm not cherry picking. Linda from Virginia Beach says Glenn Davis walks the walk and talks the talk. He has a vision for Virginia jobs. And then Councilman Robert Ike from Chesapeake says, listening to Glenn Davis discuss his economic development plan for Virginia is exciting. Just what we need, a businessman in Richmond. Go Glenn. So you got a fan there for Congressman Robert Ike. You should probably call him up, ask him for money. We're out of time, Glenn. I want to thank Glenn Davis for being with us. More information, davis4lg.com, davis4lg.com.